Another day, another plot twist in what looks to become a really busy offseason for the Silver and Black. That plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for January 10th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you, whether you're catching us wherever you find your favorite podcast or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page. We do appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of your support. And, of course, the job my man Ari does behind the scenes on the YouTube page continues to make it grow. Does a fantastic job. We definitely appreciate him, and we appreciate you as well, Raider Nation. But if you want to hit up Ari, you want to check him out, you want to show your appreciation, he's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And, of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693. Trust and believe plenty of folks want to be a part of the show with the latest and greatest news that comes with the Raiders on Thursday when they announced that Tom Telesco, the Raiders GM, was going to be gone, not returning after one season. And what a really good job he did, at least in the NFL draft, in my opinion. So we got your calls and texts, plenty of feedback coming up as we close out the show in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll kind of compare and contrast. Well, what is going on? What is the plan? What is the vision? It appears to me that the Raiders have a vision, and there's a couple different ways that it can go. Obviously, it's not clear to us. Hopefully, it's clear to them. We'll talk about that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as we always do, and we'll jump into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use promo code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So the big news of the day when it came to the Raiders is the fact that around almost noon Pacific time, the Raiders decided to, well, let Tom Telesco go, not bring him back, even though the GM did a really good job in his first year with the Silver and Black in his draft, getting Brock Bowers, getting JPJ, getting DJ Glaze in the first 3 picks, all starters, and, of course, Brock Bowers, an absolute stud, all-pro according to NFLPA, a Pro Bowler, broke many different records. So his first 3 picks were fantastic. Got a lot of guys that were playing, a lot of young dudes that were playing, coming off of that draft class that he had. But, in fact, the Raiders decided to move on Thursday. They put out a statement saying the Raiders have relieved Tom Telesco of his duties as general manager. We appreciate his efforts in building a foundation for the future. We wish Tom and his family all the best. And to me, the only thing that was confusing about it was, why stagger it? Why have Antonio Pierce get fired on Tuesday and then hold on to Tom Telesco until Thursday? That was kind of strange to me, and which makes me believe that the Raiders, in fact, planned on keeping Tom Telesco originally, and something changed in between Tuesday and Thursday. And Tashawn Reed from The Athletic put out a tweet, said, per sources, the primary reason for parting ways with GM Tom Telesco was having the opportunity to have the next GM head coach tandem on the same timeline. That's similar to what's going on in San Francisco with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. They are brought in at the same time. They share the same vision, and their contracts align with each other. So that's what Tashawn is referring to, is what the Raiders are trying to do. Is that Mark Davis learning from past mistakes? Is that the Tom Brady effect? I know everyone gets tired of hearing about the Tom Brady effect, but trust and believe the Tom Brady effect is real, right? I mean, he is a part minority owner, and he's not playing a part minority owner role. He's playing a role that's probably more closer to president of player personnel and acquisitions, and really helping putting this thing together. It's something that I've talked about. Again, I know a lot of Raider Nation don't want to hear it and think that, what does Tom Brady know? I agree. I actually got a very lengthy tweet on Thursday from a listener that said, stop talking about Tom Brady, right? I mean, just because Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player that got it done doesn't mean that he was a really good owner, and he put together a really good team, and he hired really good coaches. And I agree 100% with that. I've actually said that exact thing on this show many times. I come from the world where Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player ever to do it, and I know that's an argument that we can have, and that's fine. It's a barbershop conversation that'll never go away. That does not guarantee that you're going to be a great personnel guy or be able to hire a great coach or put together a really good team. Look at John Elway in Denver, right? It didn't work out for him. Didn't work out for MJ. Is it going to work out for Tom Brady? We'll find out. But that's definitely the direction that the Raiders are going. Here's Ian Rappaport from NFL Network talking about the Raiders firing Tom Telesco and Well, why now? Why wait?
Raiders are the Raiders, and owner Mark Davis does things on his own timeline. From my understanding, he had to do some meetings on Monday to really finalize and crystallize his decision to move on from Antonio Pierce. Showed up. He is a late arriver at the facility, so showed up about midday on Tuesday, fired Antonio Pierce, went through a bunch of other meetings to decide the fate of general manager Tom Telesco, and today informed him that he also was out after just 1 year. And the mechanics of this are interesting because the Raiders are also, of course, conducting a head coaching search. They've put in several requests to interview head coach candidates. From my understanding, Tom Telesco was not involved in that at all. Instead, it was a search firm run by Jed Hughes named Korn Ferry that was actually involved in the search for the head coach. So while Tom Telesco was still the GM as of a couple minutes ago, he was not involved in the head coach search.
Ian Rappaport talking about the Raiders do things at their own pace. Mark Davis, Raiders owner, does things at his own pace. They're not in lockstep with the rest of the NFL. They go to the beat of their own drum, and that's just kind of what it is. So they moved on from AP on Tuesday. On Thursday, moved on from Tom Telesco. And again, I do fully believe that something changed, and it really probably opened things up when it comes to some of the potential candidates that they'll be talking about. But now that that has happened, now that Tom Telesco is gone, the Raiders will be the second team in the Super Bowl era to begin 3 straight seasons with a different coach and GM. Only the second team in the Super Bowl era, which that has got to stop. 2023, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. 2024, Antonio Pierce, Tom Telesco. 2025, TBD. With the Browns in 2012, they were the only other team that did it. Pat Shurmur, Tom Heckert. 2013, Rob Chadinsky and Mike Lombardi. In 2014, Mike Pettin and Ray Farmer. Only 2 teams in the Super Bowl era, or organizations, I should say, in the Super Bowl era that have done that 3 straight seasons. And you can dance it up, you can dress it up, you can put lipstick on a pig and say, yeah, but those are the facts. So who could be the potential GM? Who should we be looking for? Jonathan Jones from CBS put out a tweet. The Raiders will have plenty of qualified candidates for their now vacant GM job. One name to keep an eye on, Bucs assistant GM John Spytek. He's been a critical part of Jason Licht's staff in Tampa, played with Tom Brady at Michigan. He's also interviewing with the Titans, so pay attention to that. As far as their head coaching search, because, of course, that's what we've been focused on here until we found out about Tom Telesco. Today, the Raiders are interviewing Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is not taking interviews with everybody. He turned down the Jets, turned down the Patriots. He's interviewing today as well, but he turned down, who was it? The Jets and the Saints. That's right, the Jets and the Saints he turned down. He took the Raiders interview. He only is taking interviews that he's interested in. Remember that. We'll talk about Ben Johnson coming up segment number 2. Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator, also meeting with the Raiders today. These are all by way of Zoom, by the way, and he's busy. He is a busy dude. He's meeting with every single team that has an opening except for the Patriots, and I think that's because Mike Vrabel is just about a foregone conclusion. He's going to be their head coach, but Albert Breer put out this tweet. Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn will interview for the Raiders head coach tomorrow. This was a tweet on Thursday. So Jets today, Saints and Raiders tomorrow, and Jaguars and Bears on Saturday. Declined to interview with the Patriots. So Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn today for the Raiders. Also, Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, also by way of Zoom and also by way of Albert Breer. The tweet says, big day tomorrow for Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. He'll interview with the Jaguars, Raiders, and Jets all in one day for their head coaching positions. Those interviews will be virtual for the 4-time Super Bowl winning coordinator. So those are the ones that are happening on today. Happening next week, Robert Saleh, formerly the head coach of the Jets and defensive coordinator of the 49ers, and Pete Carroll, formerly of the Seahawks, a guy that we've had a lot of conversation about here on the Locked On Raiders podcast on Raider Nation Radio 920. Vinny Bonsignore is the one who brought up his name originally. He let me know that Pete Carroll definitely had interest in the Raiders. Didn't know if the Raiders had interest in Pete, and when in fact he met with the Bears on Thursday, and after that the Raiders set up an interview for next week. So Robert Saleh and Pete Carroll will both enter the mix next week for the Raiders. So they're up to, 6 interviews? Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Steve Spagnuolo, Robert Saleh, Pete Carroll. That's 5. I'm trying to remember who is the other one that they're supposed to meet with. Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Steve Spagnuolo, Robert Saleh, and Pete Carroll. At least 5. There could be another one that I'm missing, but there's definitely 5 of them lined up, and 3 of them will take place today. So what would Pete Carroll bring to the table? I got an opportunity to catch up with Richard Sherman. I'll let you hear what he had to say about Pete Carroll. Plus, we'll talk about another plan of attack that the Raiders may have as they're looking for now a GM and a head coach. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the show, including Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now it's a thing of a past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers, no more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got 1 form or 20 forms, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by pros. If you want to get ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed, head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. I also want to tell you about PrizePicks. You know it's playoff time. If you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football, want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinion into cash while daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your pick in less than 60 seconds. Whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions with a B in winning, it's clear that people love the platform. And here's a great special offer for Locked On Raider podcast only listeners. All right, Locked On NFL listeners too. Download the app today. Use promo code Locked On NFL. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. And if you missed that because you're in the back row, all good. Download the app today. Use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. No GM, no head coach. What direction are the Raiders going? I've been very adamant, and as a matter of fact, that I think they need to go with a veteran head coach, somebody who's been there, done that, some that's got the skins on the wall, the know-how, the put it together, and this is what it looks like, smells like, this is how we're going to win. A veteran like a Mike Vrabel. Well, Mike Vrabel, I feel like is signed, sealed, and delivered to the Patriots. Vinny Bonsignore introduced, Pete Carroll to me, and I was kind of, lukewarm on him. Wasn't really, gung-ho on him, even though I know that he's got some skins on the wall. Obviously, what he did at USC and also what he did with Seattle. Just didn't really know if he was a guy that was the right fit for the job. But I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to have an open mind. So, as I've mentioned multiple times throughout the course of the week, I was going to get a chance to talk to Richard Sherman, who played for Pete Carroll with the Seattle Seahawks, NFL cornerback, Super Bowl champ, Pro Bowler, multiple-time All-Pro guy, led the league in interceptions back in 2013. If anyone knows about Pete Carroll, it's Richard Sherman. So I've been teasing that I was going to talk to him Thursday morning, and in fact, I was able to do that. And this is before Tom Telesco got fired. But I just presented it to him about Pete Carroll, the fact that his name has come up here locally in Las Vegas, tying him into the Raiders job, even though at that time it hadn't been even thought of. The Raiders hadn't reached out and asked for Pete Carroll to interview. Now they have. As a matter of fact, Adam Schefter said former Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll, who met Thursday with the Bears about their vacancy, will interview next week for the Raiders head coaching job per source. So that was late on Thursday night when Schefter put that out there. So we're talking about Pete Carroll before it was ever really a thing that Pete Carroll could be a guy that the Raiders have interest in. Well, good thing that they do, because I asked Richard Sherman about Pete Carroll and what he brings to the table. Here it is. One name that has popped up here locally is a guy that you're very familiar with in Pete Carroll. Talked about the fact that he could build something. What could you tell us about Pete Carroll if, in fact, he does become a guy that, could become interested in the Raiders job?
Well, you'd have an immediate rival in the Chargers with all that going on. I know them in Kansas City have rivalries, but he and Jim had their own personal history. But I think it'd be a good job. I think he'd do a great job. He's a culture builder. He's a leader of men. Understands the league. Understands what it takes to have success in the league. Understands what it takes to build a good defense. To be competent within a game. Understanding in-game situations. He'd hire good coordinators. He has relationship with great coordinators in the league, and he's shown to have success with a young quarterback. With Russell Wilson in our time in Seattle, we won a Super Bowl in his second year. and you're not asking him to do a ton. He built that offensive line, built a run game, because that's what you're going to need to have success with a young quarterback. He's going to need to improve that defense, and I think he understands the day-to-day grind and the day-to-day needs of NFL players and the mentality and the psychology behind running a business and running an organization, and I think that's what makes him a really good ball coach, and I think he'd do well wherever he goes.
What is it that goes into that psychology of what a player needs, what a locker room needs? I mean, in Seattle, you guys had a lot of different cast of characters, but you guys were able to come together to win that Super Bowl, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just managing personalities, understanding your personnel, understanding what motivates them, what pushes them, what drives them, and then allowing that to stay at the forefront. He kept the mantra, everything's a competition, always compete, and then brought a lot of dogged competitors out there. And I think he didn't allow things like draft position or money or, what free agency, what you got in free agency to dictate the roster or the depth chart. And so you roll the ball out there with a lot of competitors and you let the cream rise to the top of the crop. You're going to end up with a good team on your hands. And I think that's what ended up happening in Seattle. He just put a lot of competitors together in a building and rolled the ball out and said, best man plays, and the best man played. And when, in terms of the mentality and keeping it fun, he played music, kept it fun, kept the rules simple. Hey, be on time, be a good teammate, keep the team first, and it's all good. And I think most of the time we did that. I think most of the time we're on time, we're having a good time, but we understood, hey, you don't play well, you don't play. And I think that culture and that mindset that he built really, once you buy into it, hard to beat.
So I thought that was a pretty positive, thought from Pete Carroll, or from Richard Sherman on Pete Carroll, I should say. And I know that they didn't really see eye to eye, especially at the end of his run there in Seattle and the Legion of Boom. But you see what he's talking about, what he brings to the table, and he would do a good job anywhere. So that's one side of the conversation, where if you go with a veteran, that's what you're looking for. Exactly what Richard Sherman described in Pete Carroll. Knows what it looks like, knows about the culture, knows what the players need, and rolls the ball out there and says, okay, the best guys are going to play. It doesn't matter where you were drafted, how much money you make. It's just the best guys for the job. Got to go and get it done. That's one side of the spectrum. That's one way that I feel like it could get done. But now that Tom Telesco is no longer in the mix and the GM position is open as well as the head coaching position, this could be something, and I talked to many different people on Thursday, and this is kind of one of the consensus that people are coming up with, is that Tom Brady is trying to build this thing in his vision, where what he's trying to do is have the idea of what he wants his team to look like, and this could open the door for a young guy like a Ben Johnson who's interviewing with the Raiders today. It could open up the door for him also to come in with the GM at the same time, be allowed the time to turn this thing around, where there may be a couple lean seasons from now, moving forward for the next couple years before they're real deal contenders as they're trying to put this thing together. But they're going to have the patience and allow that coach to have his opportunity. Because look, Ben Johnson is very, very particular with who he interviews with, and he doesn't want to get the first time he's a head coach be the wrong time. So I think there's different ways that it can go. So if you're in the Ben Johnson camp that you would like to see him, and he's a sharp offensive mind, we know that, then this is probably good news for you, because it sounds like that's what they're looking for, as a younger guy that they could build with the team, have him sit there and grow with the team, and have that long standing power, as opposed to maybe even a veteran where a Pete Carroll might want to do it his way, not necessarily Tom Brady's way. So that could be where the conflict comes in. And now that, like I said, the slate is clean, the fact that the GM coming in, whoever that is, has 10 draft picks, number 6 being the first round pick, has over $100 million in salary cap space, right? The weapons that are there that are quality. And in Ben Johnson's case, look at the quarterback that he's working with in Detroit, and Jared Goff, right? Aiden O'Connell's not necessarily, Jared Goff, obviously, because Jared Goff was the number 1 overall pick, but he's an accurate quarterback. He's got a strong arm, but he's just like Jared Goff, where there's statues in the pocket. They don't run around. So maybe Ben Johnson's like, yeah, I can work with that, especially if you let a rookie quarterback sit behind him for a little while. Yeah, I can work with that guy, right? I mean, these interviews that are going to be taking place today, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and also Steve Spagnuolo are going to be interesting. I don't think Steve Spagnuolo really is a guy that's in line for any. I just don't see that, but we'll see. Now, the interesting part about Pete Carroll and the fact that Pete Carroll and Robert Saleh are both interviewing next week, Robert Saleh is from the Pete Carroll tree. So I'm thinking about this in two different ways. Robert Saleh could end up being the Raiders defensive coordinator one way, one how. whether that's with Pete Carroll as the head coach or Ben Johnson as the head coach. And they could be interviewing Robert Saleh to gauge his interest on exactly that. They may not want to hire him as the head coach, but they may want to gauge his interest as, could you be a defensive coordinator for Pete Carroll, somebody that you work with? You come from the Pete Carroll tree. Could you be the defensive coordinator for Ben Johnson, who is an up-and-coming, hotshot young dude, but we want to do like the Rams did with Sean McVay and have a solid defensive coordinator in place and let him focus on the offensive side of things? This could end up being a win-win for Robert Saleh, where he's put into a really good position. And it looks like the 49ers want to hire Saleh back as a DC. So to get him to interview with the Raiders, they have to position it as a head coaching interview. And it might start out like that. And then they say, well, if we don't go with you as a head coach, what would you think about being a DC if you're very familiar with the head coach? Or if there's a hotshot up-and-comer coming up, like, would you want to be a part of that? And, oh, by the way, you're working with Tom Brady as well. I can see that all being in play. To me, it feels like now that the slate is clean with no GM and no head coach in place, I feel like the Raiders, for the first time in a long time, have a clear vision on what they want to do. The only thing I don't know in this vision, the only part that's cloudy, is do they want to go with a veteran like a Pete Carroll, or do they want to go with the young guy who's never done it, a new booty I like to call him, like Ben Johnson or maybe Aaron Glenn? Right. And who knows, right? Liam Cohen could be one if they, in fact, at some point, ask and request him to interview. They have not done that as of yet. But those are some interesting different scenarios, interesting thoughts from Richard Sherman on Pete Carroll, which, got the juices flowing a little bit when he had that to say about his former head football coach. And obviously he's a Super Bowl winner and won a national championship at USC as well. So he's got skins on the wall. The Raiders have a couple different options. They can go either or, and I think it's still a winning proposition. But those are the propositions that are out there as far as I'm concerned as of right now. What's on your mind? 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will close out the show. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, do want to tell you about our great sponsor, FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. You can visit the website for anything, right? Player prop bets, who's going to score a touchdown first, who's going to, have a dominant day, is there going to be an interception hat? I mean, all kind of different props that they have out there to make your betting even much more fun. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts are off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with LJ Raider from Canada. He's calling to talk about the firing of AP and Tom Telesco. Here he is, LJ Raider from Canada.
Q, it's LJ Raider from Canada. The one that first started talking about the 2-5 tanking. I was ticked off when AP got let go, not just because of the results of the season, but how they did it. They set him up to fail. Couldn't get him a quarterback. He told everybody, need a quarterback. And I think it's disingenuous to how he was let go. And now when I see the news that Telesco's let go too, I'm happy as well. I think that because he didn't get the job done. His job was to get a quarterback. You need a quarterback to win in the AFC West. He couldn't get AP one, and the way things are looking right now, people keep talking about, oh, let's just get the best player. No, you need a quarterback, and you got to do whatever it is you need to do. So I at least now have some renewed faith in where the Raiders are going. I see some kind of direction, but there's no way AP gets fired and Telesco gets to stay. And now that he's gone, I'm happy. Let's go. That's all I need to say. Go Raiders.
LJ, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. You know me, man. You've been around me, listening to me for long enough. I never pull for anyone to get fired. I understand your thoughts. I heard a lot of people say, well, if AP is going to get fired, Tom Telesco should too. I don't root for anyone to get fired. But like I said, I understand. I get what you're saying. But we'll see what they do. right? It's going to be interesting to see how they play now that both positions are open. And I'm not a fan of hiring the head coach and then hiring the GM. I think they should do it the other way around. To me, that's backwards order of operations. They should do it, like I said, GM and then head coach. And that's clearly what they did not do when they hired AP and then they hired Tom Telesco. So, it looks like, and from all reports, the position looks that much better now that there's a team, a clean slate, and whoever comes in, they can all come in together. So that's going to be the intriguing part of what they do and how they do it, the way that they operate. But thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from AJ from AZ. Says, "Hey, Q, AJ from Arizona. I ain't going to lie, man. I know you get lots of texts and calls. When I keep sending mine up there just to hear your thoughts, I swear, man, I feel like a crazed person spamming text, LOL. Like I'm telling myself maybe I should just chill. Anyways, I see we got an interview with Ben Johnson, and man, that'd be exciting. I know you said you'd rather have someone experienced. I agree with that, which is why I'd want Vrabel, but Johnson would be a solid choice as well. I want to see, though, to be honest, all I want to see is a coach that can last past 2 years. LOL, that's my wish. Once we get past that, I feel like this team could definitely be built up to a great team in the league. It's a young team for sure, but hey, they've been doing enough to have been name drops, such as Bowers, JPJ, and Glaze. However, in this upcoming draft, if we can't hit on that quarterback in the first round, I say go get T-Mac, the wide receiver from Arizona, or Will Johnson, but I prefer Mac because, he's a key player on offense, dude, 6'5", one of the best wide receivers in the class, and I'm biased because I'm from Arizona, but still, that'd be nice. In second round, I don't mind Dart or Milrow, but let me know what you think, man. Love the show. Take care. That's AJ from Arizona. Thanks for the text, and yeah, man, thanks for not taking it personal. It just happens. Sometimes, texts get lost in the shuffle or calls, and I apologize, but thanks for rocking with me and sticking with me. And yeah, I mean, Ben Johnson is interviewing today. And now that the slate is clean, as I mentioned in segment number 2, there's a couple different directions that the Raiders can go. And if they're allowing him to have time to build it, I wouldn't mind a guy that didn't have experience. But you got to allow him to build it. You can't say, if this guy's not clicking on all cylinders in year one, going to get rid of him. Like the Raiders just can't keep doing that. That rotating door is ridiculous. They just can't. So that's going to be, again, intriguing to see what direction they go, veteran or younger cat. But I feel like they've opened the door to both. T-Mac, the wide receiver from Arizona, is fantastic. It doesn't matter if you're biased. He's fantastic, right? Probably the best wide receiver in this upcoming draft class. As far as Jackson Dart or Jalen Milrow, Dart from Ole Miss is really good as far as the quarterback goes. And Jalen Milrow, I like him a lot, but I also understand that he's going to take some time to get there. He's not going to be ready to play in 2025. He's going to definitely have to sit, which I know Tom Brady's okay with. He said it multiple times. He doesn't think rookies should start right away. So I think Jalen Milrow would have to sit at least a year, maybe even 2, to be that guy. He's athlete, heck of an arm, heck of legs. Like he could run. His intermediate and short passes, though, they leave a lot to be desired. So I think he's going to wow it at the combine. But I just don't want a team to fall in love and the Raiders to fall in love with him because of his athletic traits and what he does at the Underwear Olympics. It's more about what he's done on film. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Said from the U.S. Virgin Islands. He's calling with mixed feelings when it comes to the dismissal of Antonio Pierce and also has a question he'd like to throw out there as well. Here we go. Cedric from the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Oh, man, Q. This is Cedric from St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. A Raider fan for 40-plus years. Q, I have very mixed feelings about AP's dismissal. There's obviously improvements that needs to be made. However, AP, the man, is someone that you had to root for. You wished him the best, and it didn't turn out well for him. Here's my question. There were anticipated weaknesses in terms of AP managing the team, the game, whatever. So Marvin Lewis was brought in to be assistant head coach. My question to you is, did you see any effect that Marvin Lewis had in a positive way with AP running the team? Because from my point of view, and the game management issues that I saw that AP had, I wondered many times what effect, what assistance was he getting from Marvin Lewis, who was a head coach for for many years in that league. So please address it. I know you're close to the team, and if he had an effect, positive or negative, you would maybe have a sense of that. So let us know. Thank you. Keep it going. Love your show. Don't miss your show at all. Enjoy the new year. Thank you.
Sid, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, your question that you had, and I got to admit, I asked myself that a lot throughout the course of the season because I thought Marvin Lewis was really going to be that guy that AP could lean on, help out with in-game decisions. You know, hey, this is what I would do in this situation because of all the experience he had at Cincinnati. And I just never really saw him aggressive on the sidelines. Like a guy like Joe Philbin, once he took over post, the bye week, he did some really good things with the offensive line. Obviously, a longtime offensive line coach. Rob Ryan saw him aggressively up and down the sidelines, thought he was, doing some really good things. But I never really understood what Marvin Lewis was doing. Of course, there was reports out there that, they were just him and others were just cashing checks. I don't know if that's the case. I don't think he would do that. But it just didn't seem like he had a whole lot of input. I thought he was going to get a lot more input out of that. So, we'll see how it all plays out. But and of course AP, I wish him the best. I was hoping things would work out for him. It just didn't. They weren't patient enough to allow him to grow, and maybe he wasn't going to, given the the climate of what he had. So thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Shout out to the U.S. Virgin Islands, by the way. Next up, got a text from Nittany Lion Raider. It says, Q, Nittany Lion Raider here. I'm watching my Nittany Lions in the Orange Bowl. I'm really shocked about Telesco. I don't love this move for a couple reasons. One, I thought he was brought in for less than 1 year. He had a really good draft. Two, he was hired after our former head coach and didn't have a say in his hiring. Three, I imagine this type of instability won't bring in top-tier talent evaluators who I thought we may have had in Telesco. As I try to read through the tea leaves, I wonder if that means there's a coach out there who wants to work with his own GM. This leads me to Vrabel. While I'm sure he'd love to be a Patriot, I do wonder if he'd prefer to work with Brady versus Kraft. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and who knows, by the time of tomorrow's pod, Vrabel could be a Patriot, but I'm not sure this will be the case. That's from Nittany Lion Raider. Thanks so much. And yeah, I mean, Vrabel could be in play. I do think that, that he's going to be a done deal to the Patriots. The Raiders haven't even reached out and asked for an interview with them. So I think that kind of lets you know all you need to know. Aaron Glenn, who's meeting with the Raiders, is meeting with every single team that has an availability except for the Patriots. So again, I think that kind of tells you all you need to know. But I do think, as I mentioned in segment number 2, that this means that the Raiders have a clear vision on what they want. They're just still kind of deliberating between the veteran coach and like a Pete Carroll or a new booty like a Ben Johnson. I think that those are really the two different sides of the spectrum that they can go, but the vision is shared where they want to bring these guys in at the same time. So we'll see, right, how it plays out. It should be interesting. And of course, by the time we listen to this, there could be a lot of changes with the Raiders. That's how it's been on the daily. So thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a call from John in El Paso, calling to talk about Tom Telesco getting fired on Thursday, what his thoughts are on that, and also has a question about the Raiders' power structure. Here he is, John in El Paso.
What's up, Q? This is John from El Paso. Just heard the news about Telesco getting fired here. Honestly, a little bit disappointed. I thought he did well, other than the Gardner Minshew debacle. My theory is that since both of them got fired, him and AP, that Telesco convinced AP on the starting of Gardner Minshew, and it cost both of them their job. I don't know what you think about that. Secondly, just kind of thinking out loud here, what do you think the possibility of the Raiders going away from a GM-controlled team to an owner-controlled team, getting rid of the GM position and Brady stepping in as that role as, I don't know if it'd be called like a football operations guy or whatever, but I don't know. Let me know what you think, Q. Take care. Bye.
Big John, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, I do believe that Telesco and the fact that he paid Minshew that $15 million fully guaranteed, I think that had a lot to do with him starting this season. I know a lot of people want to just point the finger at AP. I think a lot of that had to do with Tom Telesco and that money, and I think that that's probably part of the reason that, Telesco was looked at like, what are you doing? Right? I mean, Gardner Minshew wasn't that guy. What made you think that he was that guy? But also, I think the bigger picture is, as it was mentioned in segment number 1, Tashawn Reed put out that tweet about They just want to have a clean slate and the timelines line up with the new GM and the new head coach. Again, I feel like it's very targeted. I don't think it's just randomly like they're going to draft or sign a GM and then sign a head coach that kind of don't go hand in hand. I think they're going to try to do this power structure thing correctly. As far as, like player personnel or football operations, I think that's who Tom Brady is, right? He's not really necessarily has that title because he's part ownership, but I think that that's who he's basically going to be. And remember, that's what the Raiders were supposed to be looking for last year. Mark Davis said he wasn't opposed to having a president of football operations, and he never hired that guy. I think Tom Brady's playing that role without necessarily having that title. And then the GM will obviously answer to him, and the head coach will answer to the GM, and they'll go on from there. But they're also going to bring in the GM and the head coach at the same time. So, John, Big John, El Paso, thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. And Raider Nation, that's going to do it for the show. Who knows what kind of twists and turns are coming next? Who knows when the next update's happening? Just keep your head on a swivel. I say it every single day, and I mean it. Keep your head on a swivel. You don't have to do like me where I live by my phone and just wait for every time it makes a noise and think, oh, boy, what happened now? It's no way to live. It is not fun. Trust me, it is not fun, but that's what we do because I want to make sure we stay updated. So this has been changing every single day. What's going to happen over the weekend, especially over the playoff weekend where teams are going to start to lose? Oh, boy, I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about on Monday. But Raider Nation, don't worry about that. Let me live life terribly, right? I'm just kidding. It's not terrible, but, it's a little stressful. Let me do the stress for you. Don't worry about it. We'll be back on Monday. I'll get you caught up on everything that you may have missed and any other updates that are going on as well. So enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the playoffs, and we'll be back on Monday. Until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.